Well, even if the president had given Congress 30 days notice, was the prisoner swap itself legal? Our senior judicial analyst, Judge Andrew Napolitano, is with us on the Fox News deck. Was the swap itself, 5 of them for Bowe Bergdahl, legal?
No. There are 2 legal problems with it, one of which you just discussed with Mike Emanuel. And the statute is actually stronger than Senator Feinstein has characterized it. The statute requiring the 30 days notice prohibits the use of taxpayer dollars or federal funds to pay for the removal of anybody from Gitmo if the Congress hasn't been given 30 days notice. So the first challenge to the government's behavior is that he unlawfully spent money to physically get these guys out of Gitmo and to Qatar.
But Congress couldn't have said no. He just had the obligation to notify them.
Correct.
Okay.
And he signed into law the statute that said he's got to give the 30 days notice before he can spend the money.
Right.
When he did so, he criticized the law, but he signed it nevertheless. The other problem is far more, the other unlawful behavior is far more problematic for the president. And that is the argument that by releasing these guys into the theater of war in the Middle East, he has provided material assistance to a terrorist organization. Fact. The Taliban has been declared by the Congress and the president to be a non-state terrorist organization. Fact. Federal statute makes it a crime, punishable by 10 years in jail up to life in prison for materially aiding a terrorist organization. Fact. The courts have ruled any assistance knowingly and intentionally provided to a terrorist organization by an American makes that American liable for prosecution under this statute.
You're accusing the President of the United States of aiding and abetting the enemy?
Yes. Yes, it's pretty clear right there, in the statute. There's no exception for the president's behavior. That's the Nixon argument. If the president does it, it's not illegal. This statute governs everybody.
Your first point was that he returned these combatants to the theater. The president argues that he sent them to Qatar and that they'll be held in Qatar for a year.
That's the president's argument. When the president was questioned about this in Poland yesterday, he acknowledged it is probable that they either won't stay in Qatar for a year, or as soon as they leave Qatar, they will return to the theater that they once inhabited. 3 of them were intelligence officers, 2 of them were military officers.
Aiding and abetting the enemy. Is that a matter of interpretation?
Yes, of course it's a matter of interpretation.
So it's your interpretation that the President of the United States has broken the law and should be imprisoned?
Well, I don't know that he should be imprisoned. I don't know that anybody's going to prosecute him.
Right.
It requires that somebody prosecute him. He's the chief law enforcement officer of the land. But the Congress should be aware of the fact that this statute was arguably violated by the president. The bar for
the aiding and abetting statute?
It's not aiding and abetting. That's different. It's providing material assistance to a terrorist organization, an organization that the Congress and this president have characterized as terrorist. And the assistance is human assets that he has returned to this organization.
But he makes the argument he didn't return them. He makes the argument that he sent them to a neutral place, but that he believes that they may do us harm.
A person is presumed to intend the natural and probable consequences of his behavior.
Exactly.
And the natural and probable consequences of his behavior is they're going to end up back with their colleagues at the Taliban.
So what you're saying is that in that you can't provide anything material like weapons or technology
or money.
You also can't provide any humans.
That's
in the way that
I will say in fairness to the president, the case has never been scrutinized by the courts because no one has made this challenge yet.
Because under the Constitution, the commander-in-chief can do what he wants in the way he sees fit with prisoners of war.
But he can't break a statute in the process. He can't spend money that's not been authorized, and he can't aid a terrorist organization. Look, if he had sent them to Qatar and they were going to stay in jail in Qatar, this argument wouldn't hold water.
Got it.
But because he said yesterday in Poland he knows they're eventually going to leave Qatar and go back to their colleagues in the Taliban, I think the argument should be explored about whether or not he materially assisted a terrorist organization by this bizarre prisoner swap.
All right. Judge Napolitano, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Nice to see you as always.
Good to see you.
I grew up in small-town America. As a kid, I worked in a dairy. My father and grandfather both fought in World War II. There were a lot of constants in my life, things I could rely on. Church on Sundays, the Pledge of Allegiance at school, the love and support of mom and dad, and the fact that I lived in the greatest country in the world, where every day dreams come true. But last Wednesday, as I sat in a congressional hearing room on a rainy day in Washington, D.C., listening to whistleblowers' riveting accounts of what happened in Benghazi on the night Ambassador Chris Stevens, Sean Smith, Ty Woods, and Glenn Doherty were killed, my heart broke. Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for joining us tonight. I've spent my career assigning blame for wrongdoing, instructing jurors on how to assess the truth, telling them to use their common sense in deciding who's credible, who has something to gain, something to lose, who has a motive to lie, telling them if someone lies once, you're free to assume they'll lie to you again. And there is something about the truth when you hear it. You simply know it. On the night he died, Ambassador Chris Stevens called whistleblower Greg Hicks to say, "We're under attack." The statement, clear, unequivocal, and foreboding. And Hicks did everything he was supposed to, activating the emergency response plan, mobilizing a team to repel the attack, calling the State Department's Operations Center, continuously updating the Operations Center throughout the night, even chartering a plane to fly the Tripoli response team to Benghazi. At some point, Hicks realized he was being left out of all decision-making and that the order had been given to stand down. There would be no rescue. We now know the Obama administration lied to us. They misled us, and they left Americans to die. So what do we know? Fact, the president knew at 5 p.m. his consulate and ambassador were under attack. He simply told Joint Chiefs Chairman Dempsey and Defense Secretary Panetta to take care of it. He simply went to bed. He didn't even bother to call, never checking with them again. Fact, the next morning, the president takes Air Force One to fly to a Las Vegas fundraiser for himself while Americans burn in the Middle East. He can take Air Force One for a campaign fundraiser, but he can't send fighter jets to save Americans. Fact, the fight lasted 8 hours. Fact, there was no spontaneous demonstration, no YouTube video that ignited the murderous fury in Benghazi, and they all knew it. It's not one fact, but each fact taken together is a connected whole that convinces us of what the truth is. And that truth? Jay Carney, Susan Rice, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, they all lied to us. Now, I'm tired of the sugarcoating. I'm tired of putting truth to the falsehood. A lie is a lie is a lie. Let's call it what it is. The whistleblowers changed everything. The ones who were instructed by Hillary's chief of staff, Cheryl Mills, not to speak to anyone alone about Benghazi, including congressmen. But Greg Hicks says it best.
The job now is it's a demotion. So I've been effectively demoted from deputy chief of mission to desk officer.
Mr. President, with all due respect, you actually demote the man who was on the phone all night scrambling to get help, destroying your classified records, chartering a plane, taking on the terrorist by himself. Why? Why would you do that? Why would you demote a hero? And why would you lie to us? I'll tell you why. Because of a looming presidential election 7 weeks away. Because Americans can't be under attack, especially not a terrorist attack, if, as you say, Al-Qaeda is already on its heels. Mr. President, how could you not send in reinforcements? How could you not send in Americans trained for this very kind of emergency? You're the commander-in-chief. That's your job. And enter Hillary Clinton. Fact, because the Benghazi consulate security was so substandard, it could only have been inhabited if you had issued the waiver. Fact, your department continuously denied both Ambassador Stevens and Deputy Chief of Mission Hicks' request for more security. Fact, you actually reduced security when everyone knew of the threats and the prior assaults on Benghazi. And please, don't even begin to try to sell us the idea that it was about saving money, because your own staffer, Charlene Lamb, who supposedly was dismissed, swore that the resources were not an issue, And my sources tell me Lamb is now up for an even higher post in the State Department. So, Hillary, why would you do this?
I did tell the Accountability Review Board that Secretary Clinton wanted the post made permanent.
Oh, okay. Now we know. You wanted to arrive on your chariot and announce the establishment of a permanent mission in a normalized Libya. Normalized? When you last visited Libya, you had the Defense Department pre-position assets off the Libyan coast in case you needed rescue. How could you? And then you swear under oath, just back from weeks abroad, logging all those miles, recovering from the flu, the fall, the concussion, and the blood clot. You testify you didn't know a thing about your friend the ambassador's request for more security.
Any of the requests, any of the cables having to do with security did not come to my attention.
Now, Hillary, I know you were busy that night, calling the president of Tunisia when all the action was in Libya. But you can't deny requests for more security in Benghazi and then blame the very people who asked for it. You can't have it both ways. And you want us to believe that you and the president are going to get the facts and get justice? You can't even get to the FBI, to the crime scene, for 3 weeks. And by the way, the FBI guys, they carry guns, don't they? If it takes them 3 weeks because it wasn't safe in Benghazi, how the hell is it safe enough for you to keep our civilian diplomats there? And what to do? Find some guys with impeccable reputations, beholden to your husband Bill, and ambassador named Pickering, an admiral named Mullen. Have them investigate and make sure they don't ask you any questions, or talk to the guy in charge of the emergency response. And Pickering, he's perfect. He apparently believes America is already full of Islamophobes. And while you're at it, Hillary, why not throw the president of Libya under the bus, too? The man who traveled to Benghazi at great personal risk, confirming almost immediately what you already knew, that it was a terror attack, and you basically call him a liar or clueless to the rest of the world. And how about your take on our money? You take it and buy an advertisement to apologize to the Arab world about a video that has nothing to do with Benghazi while they burn us in effigy. That'll keep the lie going, too. But they say we're obsessed with Benghazi. The New York Times says that our Benghazi obsession is all about hysterical allegations of crimes equal to Watergate. Really? My memory may not be all that great, but nobody died at Watergate, and no one was left on the battlefield. Our Congress, though, they're good. They'll get to the truth.
I find it truly disturbing and very unfortunate that when Americans come under attack, the first thing some did in this country was attack Americans, attack the military, attack the president, attack the State Department, attack the former senator from the great state of New York, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton.
You're kidding, right?
We have the best military in the world. But even with all of their technological advances, they could not get there in time.
Now, this guy hasn't even heard the testimony, and he's already accusing the man who has the most to lose, his own life, and who was actually on the ground and in the battle, of lying. And it gets worse.
Death is a part of life.
What difference at this point does it make?
It's as if they're saying, enough with the dead and on with the living, on to my next election. And remember this one?
The White House and the State Department have made clear that the single adjustment that was made to those talking points by either of these two institutions were changing the word consulate to diplomatic facility because consulate was inaccurate.
Today we know that was a bold-faced lie. There were 12 deletions of references to terrorism at the instruction of the White House and the State Department. Hillary's henchwoman, that temple of veracity, Victoria Nuland, actually tells the CIA to remove any reference to the prior Benghazi security warnings because it could be used against Hillary. But my favorite, Leon Panetta. There just wasn't enough time. Listen to this one from 7 months ago.
A Monday morning quarterbacking going on here. Basic principle is that you don't deploy forces into harm's way without knowing what's going on, without having some real-time information.
There wasn't enough time? How did you know the fight wouldn't last 24 or 48 hours or more? In which case you could have gotten rescuers there. You could have saved Americans, but you didn't even start the process because you had no intention of saving those lives. You should be ashamed of yourself. Yes, Wednesday was a sad day for me personally, for the families of those killed, and for any American who believes, as I do, that America is the citadel of honor and freedom. This past week, the dreams that I had as a little girl in that small town were shattered.